Merry Christmas Eve from Nashville. It was a bit of a slow start for me this morning after the late night last night. I'm staying here for a few days before I head back to the Bay Area, and we get to talk about the 49ers loss to the Titans. How fun, right? But hey, the 49ers actually accomplished something that was very difficult yesterday, but dubiously difficult. They managed to lose a game which they dominated at the line of scrimmage and which they outgained their opposition by 111 yards. It's not easy to do, but the 49ers for some reason seem particularly good at that. They're adept at dominating teams statistically, and I don't say that with sarcasm or snark, or I try not to, because that's one of the reasons that the 49ers are contenders, but they're also good at throwing those opportunities away, which makes them fragile contenders. And we saw that happen against the Titans last night. 20-17 win for Tennessee. At one point in that game, after the first quarter, the 49ers were outgaining the Titans 132-12. At halftime, they're outgaining them 191-55. The final stat sheet was a little bit prettier for Tennessee, but still the 49ers had yards per play advantage of about 2 yards. They hit Ryan Tannehill 9 times. They sacked him 3 times. They racked up a lot of pressure. I think 18 total pressures, according to the Pro Football Focus numbers. And they simply had all the ingredients there for a commanding victory, except they blew it with 2 Jimmy Garoppolo interceptions, a Jimmy Garoppolo miss of Kyle Juszczyk down the sideline, and then just some horrific third down defense in the second half. And we talk about how the 49ers formula is to play clean, explosive football offensively. They've shown the ability to do that in several of their wins. I mean, we were on the show before this game talking about the good stretch of football that Jimmy Garoppolo had put together. And generally, that meant not turning the ball over, setting his receivers up for yards after the catch. And when that happens, the 49ers are explosive. Well, if you're Kyle Shanahan, you're trying to pair that with an opportunistic defense. And the 49ers defense on Thursday night was the opposite of opportunistic. They were excellent on first and second downs. I mean, they're completely snuffing out the Titans, made them look inept, made Ryan Tannehill look like a college quarterback in the NFL. I mean, just overwhelmed behind an injured offensive line. But on third downs, I mean, the down of opportunism, the one where you want to perform, you'd rather not perform on first and second and deliver on third. But the 49ers were horrific on third downs. And that's with a capital H. I mean, I'd never seen anything like this on third downs of the 49ers, especially when they played well on first and second downs. Here you could see the EPA table for the Titans. I mean, this is just comically misbalanced. I'll point my cursor over what I'm talking about here. Early downs, first and second, the Titans were averaging negative expected points. Their success rate was only 28%. They only picked up first downs on 15% of their first and second downs. And that was 46 plays of this game. So for the majority of this game, as far as, play count goes, the 49ers were suffocating the Titans. They weren't getting anything. The purple indicates that Tennessee was far below average on those plays. But then all of a sudden, they just flipped the switch on late downs. That's third down, 16 total plays. And they're adding nearly 1 point per play of expected value over those 16 plays. First down rate of 56%, success rate of 62%. Both of those numbers, all three of those numbers are excellent. So night and day, and I'll get into the details of why as I kind of grade through the 49ers keys here, but it was the pass coverage's fault. Titans, if you want to boil this down into a nutshell, went into max protect to take Nick Bosa out of this game. So they kept the tight end back to block. That meant fewer eligibles downfield. And even despite the fact that the 49ers secondary had fewer guys to cover, they still played soft. So, I mean, you got to put that on D'Amico Ryans, right? The safeties are veterans too. So Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tartt should know when they could gamble a bit, take a couple chances. They didn't do that. The only play that came close to forcing a takeaway for the 49ers was when A.J. Brown tried to throw on a trick play and Jimmy Ward dove for a potential pick but couldn't get it. The soft coverage also didn't even lend help to Ambry Thomas on the game's most devastating snap. And that was 3rd down and 23 for the Titans. Arden Key jumped off sides, which really frustrated Kyle Shanahan. I mean, that was inexcusable. You can't give a free play. Give credit to Ryan Tannehill. Decided to step up in the pocket, heave one downfield, take advantage of the freebie. And somehow, some way, despite the fact that Tennessee was in max protect and the 49ers had extra DBs, nobody went over to help Ambry Thomas. And Ambry Thomas was out there alone against A.J. Brown, even though he was getting all of Tennessee's receiving production. So just an atrocious 3rd down defensive performance in the second half, set up by the fact that the 49ers offense, especially because of Jimmy Garoppolo, wasn't able to deliver when the 49ers had it rolling in the first half. It should have been more than a 10-0 lead with a 140-yard yardage advantage at halftime. But the pick to George Kittle, which we'll talk about, the miss of Kyle Juszczyk down the sideline deep, we'll talk about that. And obviously the interception to open the second half of the 49ers set the table for a Tennessee team that was beleaguered. We talked about the offensive lineman injuries for the Titans. They're missing 3 important guys up front. This is a team that on paper shouldn't have been able to hang with the 49ers yesterday, but the 49ers let them hang around. And then, of course, the Titans beat them at the end. So mistakes on both sides of the ball led to this result. I'm going to go through the keys that I set before the game and kind of grade the 49ers' ability to execute those keys. And I think I made some good keys because, as you'll see right here, the 49ers failed at some of the key questions, some of the key junctures, and that's why they lost this football game. Number 1, win the chess match against Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker. Those are the 2 Tennessee safeties who were the best players as far as grade on their defense this season. Tennessee also fielded a good pass rush, but I thought that the success of their defense, especially in games that were upset victories this season, and this one was going to have to be an upset victory for the Titans, was going to come through their safety play. And Byard and Amani Hooker are 2 good players, 2 veteran players who are able to disguise coverages, pass off zones, do all the good stuff that can confuse a quarterback. Earlier this season, they really confused Matt Stafford, who threw 2 interceptions in a loss against the Tennessee Titans. So for me, this was a concern for Jimmy Garoppolo entering this game. He generally had avoided interceptions, especially in wins for the 49ers entering this game. And he had a big challenge in front of him on a short week against a defense that was certainly going to be aggressive and create a recipe for some mistakes. And Jimmy Garoppolo failed that challenge against Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker. In fact, the second interception, which gave Tennessee a short field that allowed their inept offense to have some breathing room and some life, that second pick, that came right into the hands of Amani Hooker. It was a high throw on Garoppolo's part, trying to squeeze it into a tight window right over the linebacker to Deebo Samuel crossing the field, but Amani Hooker was waiting to pick it off after that throw was off the mark. And I thought that play was symbolic of Tennessee winning key number 1. The first interception was to Jack Rabbit Jenkins. So he was the cornerback, the 33-year-old corner that we talked about in the preview show. And he used the veteran smarts there to get in between Garoppolo and Kittle. Credit Jack Rabbit Jenkins for the pick, for understanding that Kittle was going to go for the inside leverage and, for jumping in front of the Garoppolo throw. But you also have to throw blame on Jimmy Garoppolo for not fully grasping game situation at that moment. Consider the game flow at the time. The 49ers are driving. The 49ers are dominating the football game. They're showing that they have everything at their disposal to not only win this game on the road against Tennessee, but to win it handily. It's 7-0. The 49ers are in the Titans 8. It's second down. It's a flood right now coming from the 49ers into Tennessee. They have a chance to run Tennessee out of their own building. So you can't give the Titans any bit of daylight, any sort of chance to turn that kind of momentum around. If you're Jimmy Garoppolo, that's the biggest no-no. So it's second down. On second down, I understand that you want to go tight window to George Kittle because you think George Kittle can win any one-on-one matchup. You think that could get you points, but you have to go risk reward. And that's the battle that Kyle Shanahan faces when he's coaching Jimmy Garoppolo, is that Garoppolo loves throwing into tight windows. He's good at it, right? That's why it's plus efficiency across the board for most of these games. But he's also not quite good enough at it to avoid some of these devastating turnovers. And in the 49ers' losses this season, I'm thinking about the Seattle loss, which was their most recent one before this game, and now this current loss to the Tennessee Titans, Garoppolo's over aggressiveness into these tight windows has cost the 49ers more than it's helped them. And in that situation, he's got to weigh the risk reward, right? The reward, I get it, is 14-0. You're stomping all over the Tennessee Titans. They probably can't come back from that. But the risk is they can get right back in the game. And what the deciding factor for me in that risk reward calculation is that it was second down. You could live to fight another down. You could live to risk it on third down and not on second down. That's the beauty of the situation that the 49ers were in. But I thought that Garoppolo wasted that by forcing a pass on second down. So it's about risk management, reward management. And in that situation, Garoppolo didn't do it. Now, the second pick, the 49ers needed a stabilizer, right? Tennessee was kicked the field goal. The 49ers needed to play field position on that drive. The last thing that they needed was a destabilizer. And that second pick to Amani Hooker destabilized this football game because Tennessee was able to score without even passing 18 yards, 3 runs. They were in the end zone. It was 10-10. So Garoppolo didn't win the battle against veteran defensive backs. And that was the battle that could neutralize this game. And Tennessee certainly did that. Key number 2 for me was to be ready to protect against Tennessee's 3-4 front. The Titans had delivered a good pass rush this season. And I was impressed with their pass rush yesterday, but I was actually even more impressed with the 49ers' ability to protect yesterday. And that's one of the silver linings coming out of this football game. At the end of the day, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, the 49ers are still in a situation where they control their own destiny for the playoffs. So you have to like where the 49ers are as far as they can go out and they can beat Houston. And I'm not saying everything's going to be okay, but everything will still be in front of them. And I think the same truths that applied before this game still apply after it. How deep they can go into January, and if they go into January, is going to depend on how sharply they play, especially Jimmy Garoppolo plays at the quarterback position. And that's going to be buoyed by the protection that he gets and by the potentially opportunistic defense that he gets on the other side. Well, the 49ers defense wasn't opportunistic. Garoppolo wasn't good against Tennessee. But if you want to look at silver lining and you want to look at the fact that the 49ers still control stuff moving forward and could still, deliver good football in this volatile season moving forward, well, the pass protection was a lot better than it has been, especially against one of the better fronts that the 49ers have faced. So the Tennessee front, bringing that 3 forward, Jeffrey Simmons, that, the big tackle that we talked about, Bud Dupree, free agent acquisition from Pittsburgh this past offseason. They had Harold Landry on the edge, obviously had Danico Autry. I mean, this was a good pass rush, and the 49ers only let up 2 sacks. One of those sacks, Garoppolo held the ball forever. And I think they only let up 2 quarterback hits on the game. I don't think that the pass rush controlled this game for the Tennessee Titans, which I think was a worry, especially if Jimmy Garoppolo was going to have to throw 35 times, which ended up being the case. In fact, Tom Compton at right tackle was the 49ers' highest rated pass protector. He didn't give up a single pressure. Most of the pressure was coming over the interior. I think Laken Tomlinson allowed about 3 pressures. I still actually have to watch the coach's tape of this one. I've watched the quick, replay on NFL Game Pass, but I haven't watched the coach's tape. But I do think that the 49ers actually were prepared to protect against Tennessee's 3-4 front. That wasn't the issue. And if you're one of those people that's positive, well, I'm neutral. I'm just telling you what happened in this game, good and bad for the 49ers. So if you're looking for positives, look at that. Look at the fact that Tom Compton actually pass protected well. If that carries forward, it's going to maximize the chances of the 49ers getting good Garoppolo when they need good Garoppolo in these games moving forward. Key number 3, back to the defensive side. Expose David Kessenberry at right tackle. Kessenberry is he's a guy that had struggled this season. He had given up something like 41 pressures entering this game. So you thought that the 49ers would really be able to get after it on that right side. But the Titans helped Kessenberry a lot. He only allowed one pressure in this game. I think that one came to Bosa. And Bosa only had two. But the thing is, the 49ers there were two dynamics at play here. The 49ers ended up getting 18 pressures despite the fact that Tennessee was in max protect. But Tennessee was in max protect. So they kept tight ends back. They were ready to protect Tannehill at all costs because they know he was getting thrashed earlier in this game. So the 49ers really had their hands tied because Tennessee came out and said, we're going to make your secondary beat us. We're not going to let your pass rush beat us. And the 49ers pass rush still almost won this game. So that's another silver lining. Pass rush is doing well. Even against max protect, they were getting pressure. But at a certain point, physical realities dictate that the Tennessee Titans, are going to be able to block you if they keep a certain amount of guys back. And your secondary is going to have to step up and get the job done. And that was key number 4, pick off Ryan Tannehill. He entered this game leading the NFL with 14 interceptions, and the 49ers didn't do that, despite the fact that they had more guys in coverage than the Titans had running pass patterns. Unacceptable for the 49ers. They need to generate takeaways in situations that are conducive to takeaways. They didn't do it with that soft coverage yesterday. So key number 3, I think they kind of exposed him, but the game didn't go down that path. The 49ers still won up front. Key number 4 is where the 49ers really failed. And key number 5, tough out those Thursday bruises. I think the 49ers actually succeeded here. I mean, Deebo Samuel was playing hard. That 95-yard drive at the end of the game, you tip your cap. The 49ers rebounded. They tied the football game up. Deebo Samuel got the wind knocked out of him at the end of it. All fair. But he put in 100% effort in this game. The 49ers up front put in 100% effort. You have to like what the defensive line did from an effort perspective. You have to like how the offensive line played because I thought they did a decent job in pass protection. I thought Jeff Wilson ran fairly well in the opportunities that he had, even though Tennessee, good run defense, was taking some of that away. The 49ers came ready, I think, to physically deliver in this game, but they just tactically lost at some key junctures of it, and that was mainly due to the interceptions from Jimmy Garoppolo. So moving forward, when we put this in perspective, which Jimmy Garoppolo will show up the rest of the way? This is where it's important to zoom out. The 49ers just played 2 games in 5 days. They beat the worst team. They beat the Falcons on Sunday. And then the game where they had to travel cross-country to the Central Time Zone, play on December 23rd against the playoff team in the Tennessee Titans. No matter how beaten up the Titans were, the 49ers lost that one, right? So, at the start of the season, when you looked at the schedule, this was a danger that they would come and somehow lose to Tennessee. It's disappointing for the 49ers that they didn't lose because they were out-muscled or out-bruised. They lost because they, committed self-inflicted errors. Jimmy Garoppolo threw those picks. That was rough. He missed Kyle Juszczyk. But a loss is a loss, and you have to move on. 49ers are still 8-7. They're still in that number 6 spot in the NFC playoff race, and they still play one of the worst teams in the NFL in the Houston Texans next week. The 49ers should beat the Texans. That sets up a showdown in Week 18 with the Rams. Who knows what's going to happen around the rest of the NFC? But if the 49ers play well, if they beat the Texans, they might be in regardless of what happens against the Rams. But if they win the next 2 games, they'll certainly be in the postseason. Well, then their future is still in front of them. So their future is still in front of them right now. The chances are still alive. And it all depends on which Jimmy Garoppolo shows up. People love to knee-jerk to either direction, right? He plays well. They're like, oh, great. He plays poorly. Oh, it's the end of the world. Let's just pack it in and wait for next season. It's been unwise to take either of those 2 approaches anytime, and especially this season in such a volatile year that's going up and down for the 49ers and the whole league, right? Quarterbacks around the league are driving their fan bases nuts. The truth of the matter has always been that the Jimmy Garoppolo shows up is going to be the Jimmy Garoppolo that dictates where exactly the 49ers finish this season. If Jimmy is good, the 49ers have a chance to make a run deep in January. If the Jimmy Garoppolo that showed up in Nashville last night rears its ugly head again for the 49ers in one of these crucial games moving forward, well, it's not going to end up well for the 49ers. As the quarterback goes, so goes the team, especially without a dominant defense. So that's my question. Which Jimmy Garoppolo is going to show up? Don't blow it out of proportion in either direction. He's been good in several games. He's avoided turnovers in several of these games, but he's also laid a couple real duds against Seattle and last night against Tennessee, and it wasn't good enough for the 49ers. Also moving forward, I already talked about this with Tom Compton, but positive trends along the line of scrimmage. If you're going to maximize the chances of good Garoppolo, well, then Tom Compton's got to be good in pass protection, and he was last night. And Samson Ebukam had 5 pressures for the 49ers. That is now 13 pressures in 3 games for Samson Ebukam after he only had 14 pressures and 1 sack over the first 12 games for the 49ers. So you got to like that for Samson. It's a situation where the 49ers need aux pass rushers on top of Bosa, on top of Arden Key. And maybe that pass rush is rounding in the form. I think it has been over the past few weeks. Now DeMeco Ryans needs to tighten the screws and make sure the 49ers deliver better pass coverage on the back end. And that's my next big picture thing. More growth still needed in front of DeMeco Ryans. He's gotten better. We expected this to be a learning process for a first-year coordinator. But, it's just one of those things where you have to sit back and hope that he gets better even quicker, because the Rams are going to try to put a big strain on the 49ers in a couple of weeks if the Texans can't. And then, obviously, if the playoffs happen, Ryans is going to have to be on his A game. And I think coverage-wise, the 49ers weren't on their A game yesterday. But in the big picture, the 49ers' chances are still in front of them. And here is my summary of the situation. The 49ers' ability to control statistical flow makes them contenders. I mean, they do this consistently. They can outgain teams. They can out-average teams. They can make the box score look really good. But their propensity to waste it makes them particularly fragile, whether it be Jimmy Garoppolo's fault, the offensive line's fault, or the defense's fault for not being able to get off the field on third down. The 49ers do throw away advantages a lot. And Kyle Shanahan very often says, too often says, I feel that we really had a chance to win that game, but we didn't. So when the formula for the 49ers all comes together without mistakes, they can go out and kick the Rams' ass, right? They can go out and they could win some of these games against playoff contenders in convincing fashion. But when a couple things go wrong, that whole complementary formula unravels, and you see what happened against Tennessee last night. But the 49ers are still capable. Even with their backs up against the wall, they put together a 95-yard touchdown drive, tied the game with less than 2 minutes to go. So that shows that there's ability here, but the ability is also very fragile. And that's just the truth of this football team in 2021. You could talk about the future. You could talk about what the 49ers might look like with Trey Lance in 2022 or beyond. But right now we're talking about 2021, and you have a capable yet fragile 49ers team with the fragility showing up on Thursday night. It's shown up in the 7 losses. The capability has shown up in the 8 wins. They're 8-7. The future is still unwritten. And I think one of the main keys here to remember is the 49ers competition is fragile too. Hardly anybody, if anybody in the NFL, is perfect. So the 49ers are going to be playing flawed teams moving forward. It's flawed teams against flawed teams. We saw 2 flawed teams last night, but 2 who probably will be in the playoffs. So it was a playoff game, quote unquote, between 2 teams with some issues, and the Titans were able to work more magic than the 49ers. Moving forward, the 49ers' ability to control flow is their ticket to creating magic. They just need to avoid those mistakes. That comes down to Jimmy Garoppolo. It comes down to the defense. It comes down to everybody. So season's not over. It's just yet another chapter in a longer novel. Merry Christmas Eve to everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I have to, go spend some time with the girlfriend's family. And we'll be back in the Bay Area in just a few days. All right, everybody take care. Hope that you enjoy your day. Go spend some time with the family. Don't worry about the 49ers all too much right now. They have the Texans next, but that's still 8 or 9 days from now. All right, bye now.